Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our final session for June 2021 with respect to bull sessions. My name is Mark Robertson. I'm joined here by Ken Kavula and our special guest, Kim Butcher, who joins us from hot, muggy Florida. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody.
And we do have a roundtable tonight, so we'll keep it fairly brief, but been kicking around some stuff that I think you might find some interest in. I've referred to it as the Rhino Census in the year of the census. And we do want to spend some time looking at some of that information. And the balance of our time will be spent in our retrospective moment, looking back at a roundtable from 4 years ago and what we picked and what has happened since then, and see if we can extract some teachable learning opportunities or maybe just some celebration of that sort of thing. So that will include a mention of the rule of five. And you can see our business-like Rhino, who looks like he's a little hunched over there, maybe a little bit depressed. Ken, do you think we can cheer him up?
Well, I don't know. It's been a pretty good June for the markets, so he shouldn't be extremely depressed.
At least he doesn't have on the bearish attire or anything like that. All right. Let's go ahead and get underway. We'll get the legal paperwork out of the way. No investment recommendation whatsoever is intended or implied. This is an educational demonstration. Everything that we do here is to illustrate, and the key word is demonstration, to illustrate and go through the motions and illustrate the process of the methods, philosophies, techniques, etc. of the modern investment club movement as championed by Better Investing, the National Association of Investors, and Manifest Investing. We will share opinions. We do try to remember to disclose when we hold something that we're talking about in a personal portfolio, but please, please, please do your own homework and stay out of trouble that way. So again, no investment recommendation is intended. We do have a roundtable session tonight. That's our our monthly webcast where we share some investing ideas. And I think there will be some interesting stuff going on tonight with Axos Financial and First Financial. And I think I might go with Micron Technology. I'm not 100% on that yet, Ken, but the deadline's not here yet. So I'll continue to keep preparing.
As long as I have the name to put into the poll 2 minutes before we start, Mark, okay?
Okay. But if you're out there in the audience and you would like a reminder as to when we hold those events and other educational events, please send an email to nkabula1@comcast.net. Natalie will add you to a reminder list. She will not inundate you with email, and we promise that is true. If you would like copies of the slides or if you have follow-up questions or suggestions for future topics, we have been getting a few more suggestions, Ken, so we will be airing out different topics as we meander through the landscape of investing. But please send any thoughts that you may have to markr@manifestinvesting.com. All right. All right, it's a busy slide, but this is a page that is available in the Manifest forum. Again, it's our promise, our place where we keep suggested topics or things that we're reminding ourselves that we want to take a look at in the future in our bullpen. That is our queue. And I also added that I really had some fun going back over what we have covered here over the last year or so with these bull sessions that did start a little less than a year ago. And in the online version of it, those are actually hot links that actually take you to those subjects. So, for example, Jim Cramer's COVID-19 index that Ken shared with us really had a heck of a run, and we followed right along with it here at Bull Sessions. And some of those other topics, I was just with a group of friends where we went back and looked at our elections and stock markets broadcast back from last November. And boy, did that ever turn out to be basically the message is forget what's going on politically and all that other stuff. Well, you know what I'm thinking, Ken. I hear you laughing back.
Yep.
Just keep investing. Just keep investing is the moral of that story, and don't try to outsmart basically a process which apparently cannot be outsmarted. when it comes down to it. What are your thoughts, Ken?
Well, I agree that there's all kinds of indicators that are supposed to work. Who's going to be in the White House, whether the Congress is split or not split, and all kinds of things going on, but none of them seem to be consistent, and none of them seem to work any more than flipping a coin a lot of times. So let's follow the methodology that we know works and that gives us a really good return, and not be greedy looking for even more to push us up into the meme category.
Yeah, and it really comes back to that. And I know I don't know. I'm not sure I ever get tired of it. Find excellent companies, buy them when they're on sale, and hold them for as long as it makes sense to do so. It's really that simple. It doesn't matter with all that other background music. It really doesn't matter that much. All right, so today we'll take a look at 4 years ago, the roundtable. Again, that session is tonight. And we'll spend some time talking about analyst recommendations and coverage, the Rhino Census. So let's go ahead and get underway. I thought we'd go ahead and kick off with a couple graphs which are meant to be illustrative of the Rhino landscape. For those of you that are not familiar with the terminology, we refer to the institutional Wall Street analysts as rhinos. And the nutshell version of that is that we remind everybody that National Geographic has clocked a rhino at 45 miles an hour running in an open field, and we know that their field of vision is about 30 feet. So those two things don't go together very well. They're able to run at high rates of speed. They are large and heavy, and they can't see very far. So Ken and I have compared it in the past to driving 90 miles an hour on a completely snow-packed and blizzard-like conditions in Michigan, and hoping to stay out of trouble. So it is an affectionate term when we refer to the Wall Street institutions and their analysts as rhinos, but they do give us opportunities in how they behave, and that's what we'll be talking about here for the next few minutes. What you actually see on your screen is taking the Value Line Standard Edition companies and mapping the number of analysts that actually cover them. So, for example, the number of companies covering, believe it or not, only 15 of the companies in the Value Line Standard Edition have no current analysts covering them. And you can see that very quickly you get up into the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s when you have a handful of analysts covering the companies. And then obviously some of the larger companies out on the far right have a pretty good, and by the way, a group of rhinos is known as a crash. So those guys out on the far right have bigger crashes of rhinos following them. And I've actually provided the names of the top 10 or 11. They actually might be 13, baker's dozen. And if you didn't know it, here's a good trivia question for your next investment club meeting to ask your partners. What company has the most analysts covering it? And the answer is Facebook with 50. And I think that surprised you, Ken. Is that?
Well, it didn't surprise me. What surprised me is that we had so many people that were going to move into the same area and do the same work. I'm thinking of a group of 50 people all on the Facebook earnings call, and I'm thinking to myself, what extra can the added 20 people add to what we already know about Facebook? We're not getting a lot of extra clarity or a lot of extra analysis. An awful lot of repetition going on when you have that many people in the analyst community following a stock. I guess, Mark, I was caught by surprise when you asked me what else kind of strikes me as odd on this particular graph. And I guess I'm a little bit surprised that there are even 15 companies that have no analyst coverage in the standard edition. I would have expected all the companies with no coverage to be in the edition of small and medium, the extended edition as it's known today. I'm even surprised at the, looks like 36 or 37 companies with only a single analyst covering him. I really thought that the value line companies would be those companies that attracted at least an average number of analysts. And I don't know, what would you say the average number of analysts is? Somewhere around 12, 13, 14, something like that?
Yeah, I would guess, somewhere right around that number, maybe in the 15 to 20 range by the time you really shake it all out.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm talking about all companies, not just the one shown here. But
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot there, and I suspect that it is a case of diminishing returns a bit. Probably not unlike diversifying a portfolio. When you start getting past 12 or 16 stocks, incrementally, the additional stocks probably don't add that much value, and I suspect that that is also true when it comes to the analysis of these companies. But you do see,
Well, and some of it,
go ahead.
some of it might be also, Mark, that you're expected if you're running an office that does stock analysis. There are certain stocks that you'd be expected to cover, and maybe that takes care of the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples and the Netflix of the world. And you might as well throw Uber and Nvidia in there as well, PayPal, so that I can see what's going on. I guess what I would like to stress to people that are stock watchers for their various stocks and that are following stocks is that this number is important when you're looking at an individual stock, because it tells you how consistent and how likely some of the opinions about the stock are to change. I mean, think about the fact that Mark can relate what he found out between going to tennis and coming back to tennis just yesterday. But if you only have two guys following the stock or two people following the stock, then the change in opinion by one of them can make a drastic change in what the commentary for the stock says to the general public. What did you say you found just in a couple of hours last night, Mark?
Yeah, in fact, it goes with this one here. This is what the companies outside the standard edition look like, and you can see that the shape is fairly dramatically different, and there's a whole lot more zeros, ones, and twos involved here. And I literally witnessed, and in fact, somebody sent me this question via email a little while back, and they asked me, because I had made a comment during one of these sessions about companies, or actually the comment was about another analyst apparently just lost their job, and I was lamenting or grieving on behalf of that analyst, and the person wrote me the email and said, "Were you being flippant?" And I don't know. Am I flippant that all that often, Ken? In this case, what I was referring to is one of the things I do when I get up in the morning and open our database is open it up, and I encounter what you're seeing there on the upper right. And the problem with what you're seeing here is that whatever analyst was covering this particular company is gone, and their estimates for fair value and PE ratios are gone. And so what the computer says is, I don't know what to do, so it kicks back that error code. So last night, as I was telling Ken, we had 6 or 8 companies go from 1 to 0 last night. So they're virtually uncovered. And the other thing, just to reinforce some of what Ken was saying, well, first of all, this is, these are less discovered companies, less covered. And so if you're dealing with companies that are in this range here, anytime they either disappear or change their mind, it can make a massive difference on what the company looks like. So when Ken is doing his best small company presentations, he's always reminding that if you look at the number of analysts covering and you see low single digits, just be aware that a change of the mind or a termination, if they go away, can really change things fairly dramatically. So that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, we don't state it in our rules about choosing the best small companies, but I know both of us are much more comfortable when we look at a small company with coverage with 6 or 7 or 8 analysts rather than 0, 1 or 2. So it just makes you it gives you a little bit of a cushion, and it makes you feel that the numbers themselves have been thought through and are a little bit more stable than they probably are at the left end of the graph there.
So on the right side of this picture, the ones that actually do have more analyst coverage are listed here. The one with 39 that you see here is actually PDD, and I believe the name of that company is Panduo Duo. It's a Chinese company. And the one just above it, Kim, are you still with us? Or are you able to stick around? This is
Yeah,
one.
I'm here right now.
Kim does follow this one a little bit. I'm not familiar with JD, and actually it's actually listed as JD.com.
I follow it because some of the big hedge fund guys, I've been noticing that they're adding it to their portfolio. So that makes me think, as I call it, a copycat, or if I clone what the big wigs are doing, what are they buying? So then it makes me want to go in, look at it, and see if I can figure out why are they buying, to do my own analysis. It's kind of a basically for me, it's a how to find a great stock, because like Team that's up there, somebody pointed out the stock Team to me, and I recognized when I opened it up, boy, am I late to that party, because this has been on a railroad straight up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have also seen JD appearing in a number of publications at SurveyMonkey and a couple other places. I'm told that it's like a Chinese,
Amazon,
Alibaba, yeah, an Amazon type company. So there's a number of Chinese companies on this list.
Well, ASML is an ADR. We actually have ASML on the Pounce list in one of my clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it makes equipment for chip makers. But it's not Chinese, but it is an ADR. It is, I think it's European.
I'm pretty sure that one is Dutch.
Interesting.
It probably has the NB after it. The other number that you see here
is a Chinese one too.
Yeah, the other number that you see here, and I'm actually going to show you a bigger sample here in a minute. This number right here is their consensus buy, sell, or hold number. The closer a number is to 100, the more they like it. The closer it is to minus 100, the more they don't like it. And you can see that they basically like everything. The most heavily liked company on here is JD.com, the Chinese Alibaba, with virtually those 38 analysts all pretty much are saying buy or strong buy. So anyhow, interesting stuff. So yeah, I'm not being flippant when I say that's happening, and I do actually take a moment when the number goes from 1 to 0 and hope that isn't somebody that lost their job. But it does disrupt things a little bit and definitely helps keep us fresh. All right, so here's what
Mark, is that NIO right under Team? Is that the electric car people?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
One of them.
That's Chinese too then, right?
Yep. About half of them are Chinese, and there's a whole bunch of Chinese companies that begin making these screens and everything else. So, and you'll see that on the next slide. But one of the things I did want to take a moment and point out, and I don't know how to do this gently, because sometimes rhinos are too easy to pick on. But what you're looking at in the upper left is basically taking those 1,700 companies in the Value Line Standard Edition and logging the number of times that they've been classified as a strong buy or a hold down the middle, or a sell or a strong sell. And it's fairly easy to see that the rhinos basically think everything's pretty much on sale. I mean, you've got virtually 12,000 out of 24,000 selections or recommendations made being buys or strong buys. And this is actually fairly typical. It actually skews even worse to the upside most of the time. I can remember going back. This is going back. Oh man, this really dates me, Ken. But going back 20 years ago to when I wrote a similar article for Better Investing magazine, where I talked about the jumbotron The subject of the article was Cisco Systems, not the food company, but the communications equipment company, CSCO, and it had the strongest buy signal on Wall Street. And if you did a stock selection guide on the company, you came up with a par, even a fairly conservative or aggressive stock study of like minus 15%. And it had the strongest buy recommendation on the street. And that's actually documented in that article. And basically just a plea or a complaint that, boy, at some point there ought to be better correlation or better consistency there. And so that is the situation. The reason that it's on the chart as it is here is to compare it versus what we have talked about here for the last month or so. Again, if you do a stock study on the companies in the Value Line Investment Survey, you end up with less than 100 that would be in the buy zone the way that we think of it. A low enough or a high enough upside downside ratio or a high enough return forecast. Most of them are in the hold. And we have an ample number of companies that we would recognize as a consider selling situation. So it's the beat goes on, and the music kind of remains the same here, Ken.
Well, yeah, I think I go way back to my first or second year of investing when I became aware of the fact that none of the folks that I was reading about, and this is before I discovered better investing, none of the analysts that I was reading were telling me to sell anything. They were telling me to buy everything. And it's almost as if they have to be dragged. I think I told you before we started today, they have to be dragged kicking and screaming into the sell side. They don't want to go there for whatever the reason, whether it's institutional or personal or whatever. They just don't want to tread very heavily into the sell side at all.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of our cue to do that reminder, that moment. I served on the Better Investing Securities Review Committee, where we would select the features for the Better Investing magazine, the stock to study. And one of the members of that committee is renowned as being virtually the only analyst, at least at that time, in the country who didn't go to work on Wall Street. His name is Walter. He's still on the committee, Walter Kirschberger. And Walter was here in Detroit covering the analysts, so his home is right here in Michigan. And what Walter would always say is, those recommendations should be taken with not a grain of salt, but a block of salt. The recommendations that are put out by the houses on Wall Street, the home of the rhinos, really don't have that much value. And I'm sugarcoating. But he said, but, and this is a gigantic but, the numbers on the page, just like with a value line data array or the numbers that are embedded in a piece of analyst research, those are good. These are really smart people. But there often is very, very little connection or resemblance between what they put on the paper and the catchphrase that ends up at the top of the report. Kind of like when an editor slaps a title on an article that doesn't necessarily match the article. So strong buy, strong sell, whatever, doesn't necessarily match the numbers. Trust the numbers. Don't trust the words, the buzzwords. Was basically his message.
I know, Mark.
That's still true.
I know that a period of time ago, and I'm not going to be willing to put even a number of years on it, but a period of time ago, didn't some regulator kind of force the research arms of a lot of these brokerage firms to disassociate themselves from the sales arms of these same firms?
Well, they do try to have a buy side and a sell side, and there is some effort to do it, but every time I've looked at it over the years, every once in a while, a few people will tiptoe over to the sell side, but they drift back. I mean, the sell opinions, sell and strong sell opinions, and it's kind of a nightmare. Oh well.
Well, I guess what I was saying, Mark, is are there regulations? I kind of thought there were. Maybe I'm mistaken. Are there regulations that keep a wall between the people doing the research and forming these recommendations, whether they're buy, hold, or sell, and the people that are trying to get people to do various things in their accounts? Is there a separation between those two groups of people in these large firms, or can they just basically, work willy-nilly in any of those areas they choose to?
I think any separation would be mythical, and it's not. I mean, I have been on morning calls, and the morning calls are led by people who are issuing these words, and
Okay.
they are basically speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of sales representatives, and the sales
So I'm
representatives are
looking
using
at
those words.
I'm looking at something that I would like to see happening, but is just pie in the sky from my point of view. Okay, sounds good.
I don't think that there's any separation. So anyhow, that is the situation. So to the average investor out there, just be careful how you use that terminology. Now I'm going to violate my own stuff and actually show you which ones they really like right now. That's what this list is. And I just wanted to show you some of the stuff that they really like right now, just so you can see the distribution of analysts. So from left to right, some of our stuff is embedded in here. That same parade of opinions that we often do. These are the rhinos right here. And then here are their strong buy, hold, sell, and strong sell actual selections. So here's your analysts covering on the company. And then this is just simply a score. Again, 100 would be 100% strong buy. Mine is 100. You're not going to see that on this page. And there's only maybe 4 or 5 companies that are actually in the strong sell category on a consensus basis. Everything skews to this side of the ledger. And so you can see, for example, Amazon has 47 analysts covering, 35 are strong buys right now. And Amazon is probably a decent buy, but it's not the strongest buy that it's been in years. That's certainly the situation. So you can see from top to bottom. Now, the other thing here, these same 5 analysts think that Churchill Downs is overpriced by as much as 66%. Yet they're issuing a strong buy. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's reporting lag. I don't know. You can see the same thing down here with Chromadex and Turtle Beach. That's a case where the words at the top of that column don't necessarily match the numbers that they're kicking around. And
well, we're getting a few of our folks in the audience, Mark, suggesting that it's a firm belief in momentum.
there is a whole lot of momentum emphasis, and they hide behind that. They hide behind that and take advantage of it on the good side, and they blame it on the bad side. So I think it's a kind of a scapegoating out situation for many situations. Hold on for a second. Sorry about that. Forgot to silence my phone this afternoon.
Well, the other thing on all of this I'd like to say is that they have to say something. They always have to have something that they're putting out there. So, let's go. I mean, I don't think anybody's crystal ball knows why a stock goes up or down on the day and on the minute and on the hour. So they're always having to have something to talk about, whether or not the numbers are telling them it, or it's their belief or the tea leaves.
Yeah, and in that spirit, in fact, Ken, we talked about this last year, or maybe it's been 2 summers ago now, where we were talking about some aspects of technical analysis becoming self-fulfilling prophecies. And the technical analysis guru that was with us basically said, so why not take advantage of it? What's wrong with that? And in this case, I do have a measure of, if I'm doing a stock study and I find fairly decent results, and then I knew that this, and I'll think of it as a tailwind, basically these analysts putting out the strong buy and buy words, that's helpful. But I think you want to have that fundamental situation in place first. And, Amazon's looking pretty good to me when you look at numbers like this. So in this case, this becomes kind of a tailwind to me. And maybe it could be a tiebreaker if I had two companies that were fairly similar, fairly well positioned, and one was, very favorably treated by the street and the rhinos versus one that perhaps is not so exuberantly treated. So, Ken, I think this is another situation where, don't complain about it, just be aware of it and use it wherever it makes sense.
I fully agree with that, Mark. I'm looking at these numbers, and golly, for a lot of these, it's impossible to make sense out of the numbers as a group, isn't it?
It is. It can be quite difficult. So those are there. Dig through them. I did use this type of a list for shopping for tonight a little bit. Almost ended up with Amazon, but we shall see. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We're about a half hour in. Here's our groundhog moment. We're 5 months into it now. The average return is 7%. We're up to 37% of you, us, beating the market. Kathy Wood has actually moved up a couple places to 140th. And again, love and respect for Kathy. She's just having a moment, as her types of stocks have been picked on for the last several months. But many of the leaders staying pretty much the same. Lots of clubs. Ken, you're still on the list at 33rd. And
all right, thank you. And as an advertisement, the Thunder shirt is not working really well. So.
Well, and as an advertisement, you can say that Kim is still not in the top 50.
Still not in there. All right, pressing on. Let's talk about 4 years ago, June 2017, and our roundtable that evening. You can see the artwork that was featured there. He actually featured a damsel and a dragon.
Oh, you are there. Okay.
So anyhow, our three stocks that were chosen were Kroger, EPAM Systems, and Middleby. Those of you that follow us know that EPAM is still with us. That is an active, open position in the tracking portfolio. The Kroger and Middleby positions have been closed out. And so we closed out Kroger fairly successfully, and the other side of the coin came home to roost with Middleby and what happened in the spring of 2020 when the company just got crushed by the pandemic. So EPAM has been with us going back for a few years. He started choosing EPAM when he got tired of choosing Cognizant Technology, and those companies have all tended to work out pretty well. So Cy Lynch, tip of the hat to Cy, just continues to crunch along. In fact, EPAM had some slow months not too long ago, and he being Cy Lynch just persisted through it, and we have been rewarded pretty handsomely over the last year with EPAM. Your thoughts, Ken?
Well, I would just go and suggest that Middleby had a terrible pandemic time. It sells, for those of you that don't know what Middleby does, it sells large equipment ranges and restaurant style equipment to food service providers, restaurants, nursing homes, hospitals, all kinds of places where they do big amounts of serving large parts of the public. But I think that if you are interested in something heavy industrial today, that Middleby might be something to come back and take a second look at. It seems to have regained itself, regained its footing, and it seems to be moving again in a very profitable direction. All these places that serve food have to constantly keep their equipment at a certain level in order to provide the services they provide. And Middleby is the premier provider. When you go to the website and look at the numbers of different brands that they actually control, I think you'd be astonished. So we don't want to put Middleby or Kroger, for that matter, in the the can of forgotten and terrible. It just had an ungodly time during the pandemic. That's all.
Yeah, I think they were coming under some competitive pressures. The pandemic just absolutely crucified them. They probably had some trouble with the balance sheet because that persisted so long. A lot of stuff happening there. But what I do think that this gives us an opportunity, because the reason we sold it was that it had actually lagged the market by 20%. We have that rule that we can call a timeout. And it's one of the things that we have worked on as far as a selling discipline. And this is one of those cases where the company has rebounded. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But the number of times that the company that we liked at 100, and we come back the next month, flat market, but it's gone down to 80. We have always tried to resist the words, well, if you liked it at 100, you must really like it at 80 without a deeper understanding. And Ken and I have both worked on showing this, and I can show you many more examples where calling time out and walking away has prevented so much damage compared to the exceptions to that. And this one is a gentle exception.
And the exceptions to the rule, Mark, are such that there's not enough of them yet to disprove the rule. If anything, there's enough of them to prove that the rule, for the most part, holds pretty true. I guess we should add that we don't use this type of rule for a holding that we've had in the portfolio for 4 or 5 or 6 years, and you would hope that you wouldn't be carrying a stock in your portfolio that's down over 20% versus the market after 4 years. We do try to keep this rule of 5 concept to a year, maybe 18 months, and it's worked out fine for us. It's worked out great for us so far.
Yeah, and so the article that's featured here with the link actually takes you through the description, and it literally is just if it trails the market by more than 20, a relative return less than minus 20, we'll basically give it a timeout. And Ken and I were both we had a moment when we were talking about this. This goes back a little over 4 years ago, because this is from 4 years ago, when we were talking about this in the library. You may remember that day, Ken. I can remember the moment that because we were looking over a bunch of results and talking about selling strategy, etc., when we realized that it really was just the rule of 5 coming to life. And that you can read it on the screen. You're very familiar with this, but just the reality that things don't always work out. And 20% of the time, you're generally going to be disappointed, and the exceptions being the 60% that behave pretty well. And every once in a while, you'll have that 20% stock that takes off and really does extremely well. You can see the quote there. So that's really what we're talking about here. And what I want to point out is that we have seen this type of opportunity about 18% of the time in the roundtable selections over the years. And again, of those 113, we have actually improved the portfolio long-term performance in over 100 of those cases, and there's like a handful of exceptions. Oracle, and now this one's a bit of an exception. Let's take a look at it here. And here's the look, Ken. I mean, the selection was made back in June 2017, and we surrendered 3 years later on June 30th, 2020, and it had gone down as is shown up at the top there. But if we had just hung on to it, you can see that the value of that original $1,000 would now be $1,409. That's the number here. So this is kind of an interesting way to look at it. But I do want to point out that has still lagged the market, even though it's had an exceptional recovery. And that's what's shown on the chart down here. This is one of the performance charts from stockcharts.com. And we're looking at it as of the sale date right here. And I got to tell you, Ken, I don't do this very often. I very rarely go back and look at a position I've sold in my real accounts, and because I don't like looking at situations like this, because it causes you to second guess yourself. But we have to learn from these type of opportunities too. So I think looking at it from these two perspectives is meaningful. This one has outperformed over the last year. They came out of the pandemic and into the recovery quite strongly, and they have outperformed basically for the last year pretty well.
Yeah, I would not choose this stock today, Mark. At the same time, I don't want us to label it as absolutely terrible. We know some reasons. A lot of times with the rule of five stock, we're dumbfounded as to what we can say as to why it's not performing. At least with Middleby, I think we could point to a couple of very specific things that pointed out its non-performance. And it, like I've said once already, it has been on a little bit of a tear for the last maybe 2 months or so. And we'll just have to watch it as it goes forward. If my wife still happens to own a little bit of this in one of her IRA accounts, so
Yes.
we'll just have to deal with it. Yeah.
You know, if you are a shareholder that held through the entire event, it's done okay, but it has lagged the market. And here's our reminder. This goes back to something we presented a few times over the last several months, but it's not any one case where we can make a judgment about the selling strategy overall. But when we look at, again, the Rule 1 and the Rule of 5 selling strategies as implemented with a few of the relative strength index situations that we have implemented, the roundtable tracking portfolio is checking in at greater than 19%. And we just simply ask the question, well, what if we didn't sell anything? What if we simply held on to everything and made it an absolute buy and forget portfolio? And the result is different enough that actually is fairly spectacular and performance bending over the decades. So we do think that the selling strategies do have quite a bit of merit. All right.
Well, I'll hold out a hand and shake it to anybody in the audience, however, that only does 16+% in their portfolio. So, we don't want to shovel anything on top of that kind of performance. That's great performance, but when you compare it to 19+, then it begins to pale a little bit.
Yeah, and again, especially when time becomes to be a factor. And
absolutely,
we are coming up on our 12th birthday at the round table, so we're starting to reach that point where time in the market really is quite a thing. We do have another session tonight, so I think we will go ahead and shut down. We'll stick around and show some answer some questions if they're out there for a few minutes. But this is your reminder that we do keep all of the bull sessions and the roundtables, and in this case, all of the successful investing conference sessions are available at YouTube. Just search for Manifest Investing and look for the bull or the night, and you'll find them. You can crunch away and go back and listen to some of this stuff. And by the way, the better selling stuff. Here's one of the times when we presented it. Is there another one on here, Ken?
Not specifically. I think it was a subtopic of another one, Mark, yeah. But I don't think.
The managing your portfolio is always going to have that in it. So here's a couple there we can look back at. In fact, that chart was made for that presentation. And with that, there's our fireworks from a few years ago.
Let's tease everybody. We're going to have some new voices with us this evening. Cy is watching baseball tonight, and Hugh is working, and Kim is busy. But we are going to have Ann Manning from Texas and Herb Lemko from Northern Michigan. So we'll have a full complement of knights and damsels to make those stock picks tonight. So join us at 8:30 Eastern time.
Yep, should be a good rousing session. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down. So thanks, everybody. We will see you at bull sessions next week. And again, the roundtable is tonight. Look forward to seeing you at those opportunities. Take care, everybody.